All righty, you're up. All right. All right, you're up again. Let's call to order the meeting of the Board of Investments. Please take notice that this meeting is being recorded via video. Savannah, could you help me with the roll call?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to you and members of the board. Jeff Meredith.
Here.
Cindy Yunkin.
Here.
Porter Bennett.
Here.
Tim Kober.
Here.
Maggie Peterson.
Here.
Mark Berry.
Here.
John Milanovich.
Here.
Dan Trost.
Here.
Dwayne Iverson.
Here.
Representative Larry Brewster.
Here.
And Senator Shane Morajou. We do have a quorum. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item, is there any public comment on issues with board jurisdiction? I see no hands. No hands. Okay. Next, approval of the June 4th, 2025 Board of Investment meeting minutes and the June 26th, 2025 special board meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve both of those, Mr. Chairman.
A motion from Cindy, second from John. Any other comments? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Both are approved. Next item, we just short while ago, we had a loan committee meeting. So Tim, can you provide us a summary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the loan committee met this morning. All members were present. We had one order of business presented by Mr. Adam Gill. It was a request from Northern Montana Healthcare Incorporated. And since we were all present, I will not go into the details unless there are some questions. But the request came out of the loan committee unanimously and was approved.
Great. All right. Due to the size, we will vote and approve that with the full board.
Question. Can you explain to me? So we have two tranches here. We have a $15 million loan and then a $26 million. What's the difference?
So the $15 million is what the board will in effect back if you adopt resolution
So we're only
250A.
backing the 15.
We're only backing the 15 and we'll be in a first position versus the other 26 as well.
Okay. And then they're issuing a bond for the other 26.
They're issuing another bond for the other 26 through the MFFA.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Member Berry, for clearing that up.
Thanks, Mark. Any other comments? If not, entertain a motion to approve the certificate of resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Cindy, second from John. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Moving on. All right, comments from TRS and PRS board members. Maggie, you want to start?
Mine's easy. We met on August 14th. This is PERS. We had presentations from our three vendors, RBK, PIMCO, and Empower Retirement. That was the vast majority of our meeting. I always like to let the board know, this board know when other entities adopt the 457 plan, and that was done by Brockton School District this time, so. Mind, I think the only other issue we had an audit committee, and everybody knows how much I love audits. And as usual, the biggest issue we had was that entities are not offering retirement coverage for part-time, less than eligible members. And it's called optional retirement form. And that's our number one issue. We did have some issues this time where people over-reported hours or under-reported hours that weren't reportable. So our auditor is doing a really good job in one of the things that came out of this meeting is we made a recommendation that we try to get at least one more auditor on staff. Because there are, I think there, okay, let me see, there are 453. No, 543 employers. And we were looking at a 10-year period to get them audited, 50 or some a year. So if we get another auditor on board, we can actually do that. And they submitted a plan at this meeting and there were 50 employers on it that have never, ever been audited. So I'm hoping when we move forward, we'll catch more issues. Not that I want to catch more issues, but keep our plan solid and funded well. That was it. It was a pretty quiet meeting.
Thanks, Maggie. Dan?
We met, TRS met a couple of weeks ago and had a strategic planning meeting, which we do once a year, so very long meeting. And looked through all the things that we were hoping to achieve over the last several years and looked at what we want to achieve in the future. And I guess I'll be brief too. Like this organization, TRS is very well run. Sean does a great job and we come up with strategic ideas and plans and he implements them and the rest of the team implements them. So we were really pleased with how that went and it's really into the weeds. We don't need to talk about the different types of things, but it's trying to make something that's really good, even better. So certain incremental moves because we're already in good shape. That was all we did in that meeting.
Thank you. All right, moving on, Representative Brewster. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
You have anything you'd like to share?
No, not right now. I had an interesting time when Mr. Villa came over to Billings to look for sites for the new state hospital. And I'm sure he'll report on it later, but I appreciated them coming and taking a look and being real responsible in what they propose. So I'm sure we'll hear more about it later. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, next item, Executive Director reports.
All right, well, I'm gonna break the mold and start with some good news. I put some press snips from across the state. We recently handed out the keys to the first group of state employees moving into the Deer Lodge facility. Maggie and Mark joined us for that. It was just a fun reminder of how your work can make a difference. One of the employees had been living in a car for the last 6 months. He now has a home. You read about the folks that were living in a camp trailer through the winter in Montana on a county road that now have a home. So good work to all of you, made a difference. Moving on, I presented to the,
Question.
Yeah.
Can you see that from the interstate?
yes.
Yeah.
And it's just
It's
past the,
Big Four,
west.
right before you get to the second exit, if
Right.
you're heading west.
yeah, it's not in the spring like that. I wonder if that's it.
Yeah. If anybody's curious about the landscaping plan, I'd be happy to walk you through that now.
First things first.
I did present to the audit committee. You have copies of the Blue Book audits on your desk. No findings, no recommendations again. We have completed the SOC audit. The report is in their quality control review. You'll get the report on that in August or in October. No findings, no recommendations. They were kind enough to provide some additional policies for us to take a look at on disclosures as well as AI. We've been rolling out slowly how we're going to implement artificial intelligence across the agency. They have some best practices from other states that we want to take a look at. There's some areas where we're a little bit ahead, some areas we may be able to improve, but given how important that's going to be in the short and long term, getting better in other perspectives is going to be important.
Are those suggested policies relative to Board of Investments or is it relative to the entire state? I mean, are you sharing?
We only look at our lane. So the policies they provided were from other entities that they audit for us to review to see if they're applicable to our work. Just high level for the board, our policies at the current moment are you have to do a use case for the use of any AI. We currently have one AI under a state IT contract that's enterprise-wide that we can use. Employees have to do a use case. Why do you want to use the AI? And then you have to designate which data you'll be putting out there. So as part of our fiduciary review last year, we identified different types of data. Type 1, highly proprietary, type 2, preliminary, potentially released, type 3, available for public disclosure, so on and so forth. You are not allowed to put any of our data out to be learned from. There's no instance where we will put BOI data out that the systems can learn from it and replicate it and take our investment strategies or any of our proprietary data and propagate it out to others. But we have been using it, for instance, to put the board packets through, clean it up for consistency, save a ton of staff time just by doing things like that. We get a nice little report like this, and we can go through individually and identify where anything is off, errors, omissions, whatever. But it also requires human input at the beginning, use of the tool, and human input at the end. It's not like you can just generate a report and not review it. But anyway, if you'd like to see the forms and the requested and the approved use cases, happy to share those with you. We've only got about 4 or 5 out there right now. Credit research, pulling data in and compiling it in a useful way to speed up our fixed income work. So anyway,
you said that you can't learn from the system. Does that include internally?
internally, so the way it's set up is the data is saved for 7 days and then wiped unless you select, you can create what's called a channel. And within that channel, that data can be stored. So for instance, we store our logos and all of our templates for presentations, and we can use those over and over and over again. But the thing that we were nervous about is, are you taking our positions over time in for fixed income, public asset, public equities, whatever? And will that help others who have that particular tool short us, long us, take some position contrary to us that has an adverse effect on our assets? And we've taken the steps to prevent that from happening.
So a really skilled investor, informed, can't take it and figure it out.
No. So anyway, we'll be working on that in the, likely in the procedures realm, not necessarily in the policies realm. But if we do have something, we'll bring it to you.
So with credit research, do you guys have any process to kind of audit the output that you receive?
Yes. At this stage, I would say it is something, and we're still working on it. Kittle's been doing a lot with this, but it's really a tool that allows us to compile a bunch of information that's generally public news sources, et cetera, financial ratios. But yeah, you still have, so it'll kind of summarize that into a nice report. I would call that the rough draft, if you will, of kind of what we've always done. And then, yeah, they need to go through and scrub that and make sure that they got good numbers back, good information back. And it's, don't want to get too into the weeds, but I mean, it does give you all the sources and things where to grab things. So it is possible to backtrack through and say, yeah, this is real. And that's a lot of probably what we're in the process of right now, is making sure it's not hallucinating, answers to us. But, knock on wood, so far, things are looking pretty impressive, I would say.
And our enterprise belief is AI is like a hammer. It needs to be deployed for the right purpose. The user needs to make sure that it's being handled appropriately, and then that user has to check the work. But it's not going to replace individuals at this point, but it can expedite and speed up their work, maybe make them more efficient, get them access to data that they may have not otherwise known or seen in the past. So it's a tool. I'd say we're probably in the sandbox phase, but the governance structure around it is critically important, because we can't let this data out. So much of what we do is highly proprietary. It could cost taxpayers a lot of money. So Yeah.
Does RBK have any counsel for us on the use of AI and?
We just had a joint meeting to talk about a lot of investment topics, including working through the asset allocation process. And the head of our traditional asset investment manager research joined and talked about the status of AI as we see managers using it to process information, as well as what we've seen other investors do with it. And so at this point, I think you're finding that there's so much caution and care in the investment management world about what future regulations may come out about the use of AI, that folks are using it to become efficient, just like was discussed here. We're using it for credit research to compile information that's coming in about certain credits that you want to look at. That kind of efficiency versus a machine saying you should buy this security. So it's still, for as much fervor has been in there, I think there is appropriate caution about how it's implemented to make sure that, as Dan said, there's a human in the beginning, a human in the middle, and a human at the end. That is terrific best practices to continue to follow.
Thank you.
Next item, member requests from prior meetings. We will have the compensation study that you requested last time ready in October. We're using AI to put that together, so we'll see how that goes. The monthly snapshot is on your desk, just so you know how to navigate this going forward. The Go Trust does not show up on this one because this is the June 30 report. But where you'll see Go Trust based on the investment policy statement is it'll likely show up in that top right-hand corner in treasuries. And then as we slowly buy into the trust fund investment pool, it will migrate over a column into the trust fund investment pool.
So what side of this sheet are you talking about?
So you see on the the back side, you'll just see it as a separately managed account.
Okay.
But it'll show up in the front as on the NAV calculations as it's held as treasuries, and it will slowly be bought into the trust fund investment pool, so we don't adversely affect the existing trust fund
So
investment.
it'll show up in that first line, the 10th.
It'll eventually show up there as additional, yes.
Okay.
As it's deployed in those particular asset classes.
By the way, it's not in the July sheet that was handed out earlier.
No, it actually is.
It is?
It's in there. That's underneath it's in the trust fund section, the second section, about halfway down in the middle. There's the Go Distribution Fund and the Go Pension Fund.
Halfway down?
So right below,
Or is it?
It's on.
it's right below the FWP Mitigation Trust and above the Harold Hampshire Gallery. Oh, it's alphabetical, look at that. Okay, any other questions on status sheet? If not, next item, budget status for the prior fiscal year. We were low on operating expenses by about 37% in the municipal finance program. 16% low in operating expenses in the investment division. Right on track with personal services for both. If you look at the next page, based on our conversations in June, this will be the budget status report you'll be getting on a go-forward basis. That will have the percentages calculated off to the side. As soon as we have the last month's data, we'll plug this in and email it out to all of you, just so you can see where we're at. You know, we're now 2 months in, but Sabres doesn't get loaded until late July, and then you get into turnaround, so.
What was the other expenses on that one? That's the. If I'm looking at this
On the first sheet?
650-10 department.
Oh, sorry, I'm going back. 650. Are you under the investment division?
I'm
Or
just on the budget status prior fiscal year.
okay,
And if I look at the line item 62000 operating expenses, the other expenses, there was a kind of an underestimation of about 26,000, right?
That's the pay, that's the indirects we used to pay to the Department of Commerce.
What is that? Remind, help me with that.
So prior to the passage of House Bill 863, we were not an enterprise fund, we were an internal service fund. And we would pay the Department of Commerce a fixed amount every month for them to provide HR,
Oh, okay.
payroll, things of that nature. Under House Bill 863, we no longer make those payments and we perform those tasks in-house.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
On the I guess it's 26 budget. So this is just for year-to-date budget, is that what that?
This is how it was structured in Sabres.
Okay, but the 6.8 million is the overall budget.
That's the overall
And
budget.
then this is just the year-to-date budget underneath.
That is so the standard budget underneath
Oh,
is
that's
what
the
is,
thing.
yeah, that's the standard budget. That's what our budget for that purpose is.
And then we can see that we went from 8.5 million standard budget last fiscal year to 6.8 million.
Correct.
So
And that's because we were able to reduce the cost based on the passage of House Bill 863.
Way to go, Dan.
Way to go, you guys. Any other questions on the budget?
Just to understand, the rent is this bill, we pay rent for this building, which is owned by the BOI, right? That's what that is.
We pay rent to the trust fund investment pool for the space we occupy in this building, yes.
So the 41, that's what that.
Yep.
represents. Okay, great, thank you.
Yep. Other questions on the budget?
You know, I guess those two items were over on what happened to, you know, rents over and what we actually paid versus budget, and so is other expenses.
For prior fiscal year, so that's the municipal finance program. We square those up at the end of the year.
So they come back around.
They come back around.
That's why right now it's not a fair look.
Well, this is for the prior fiscal year, so we budgeted low in those items for the
Okay.
prior fiscal year. So the expenses that we were charged in that fund by the Department of Commerce and that other expenses were higher than what we budgeted at the beginning.
And that's where I guess rent would be, I wouldn't,
We had an escalator, so we
didn't budget for the escalator.
charge everybody else a 3% escalator. We have to charge ourselves a 3% escalator, so we have to
That's where
charge
that,
ourselves.
okay.
Other questions? Seeing
So the
none,
same would be in this new budget too then, where we budgeted 41, which is what we spent last year.
so 43, if you look at it, it was 43.9 and we budgeted this year 71.62.
I was just looking at the first one, they were 62,500. 41,613, and then you budgeted just about that same amount for this next year for the standard budget. So if there's an escalator, we're gonna be over again then, right?
Hold on. Peg, do you want to comment on that real quick?
Do you mind while she's doing that, talk to me about communications, what is communications?
Communications, so if we have like print and mail,
That's 200,000.
where are you looking? Peg?
Communications includes a lot of the D of A expenses for phone systems, long distance, print and mail, et cetera.
1,636.
And then Peg, do you want to talk about
This vision totals 43.
Peg, do you want to talk about the allocation changes we make as the assets move?
So as we prepare the budget and I look at where the expenses are incurred, then I allocate those expenses. So the difference in rent is we reduce the amount of rent that we allocated to the municipal program and allocated a little bit more to the investment program. So that explains some of the changes.
But okay, what I'm looking at is your actual, so when you look at under the investment division, your actual was 378. And now you're budgeting 374. If there's an escalator, it's gonna be above the 378 then, isn't it?
Peg?
I would have to look at that category to see if there was some commerce charges in there.
Yeah.
I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, let's put that on the to-dos.
It is what hits my mind is if I'm over, I make sure the next year I'm not.
Right.
Mhm.
And like we said in June, the top line number is the one, you've authorized me to move numbers down below to balance this number out, but the top line number has to balance, and if that's not going to balance, I have to come back to you for additional budget authority. Because you're the approving authority as the board. So if we over in one area, I gotta go find the expenditure abatements or other reductions to offset that.
So just looking at last year, obviously you did a good job controlling expense, coming in well under budget. Do you think with this new revised lower budget that you can still, obviously you're still comfortable that you can maintain the top line?
I'll maintain, we will absolutely maintain to the top line. It's gonna be a lot tighter, because we wanted to charge the participants less. So if we have additional things come up, we're gonna have to roll with those punches. But as far as the top line is, the things we know now, very comfortable, we can absorb that 16% budget reduction. So. Next item, we present to you the biennial work and education plan as well as the calendar. So you have the next 2 years of proposed meeting dates as well as the work plan for what we cover at each meeting. We did propose this year that we switch 2 of the meetings to remote only. Those being the April meeting where we don't have quarterly reports and the October meeting where we also don't have the quarterly performance reports. But it's your agenda. This is just a recommendation. You don't have to vote on it today if you'd like to talk about it or make changes, but I wanted to get it in front of you as soon as we could. So you've got adequate time to plan the next 48 months of your life.
Which 2 did you say were remote only, Dan? April and?
April 22nd, 2026, October 21, 2026, and then April 7th, 2027, and October 13th, 2027. Those are the meetings where we don't have the quarterly performance
There's
reports.
a page here where they're color coded.
I know I'll have a requested change for 2026, so maybe if everybody can just check their calendars, we can submit our requests to
Yep.
Dan and look at it.
So you'll have it.
I do have requests in February. Unless you want me to miss the meeting.
No. We want you here.
So yeah, if you all just want to send me any conflicts you know about, I will incorporate those and then bring them to you for a motion and adoption next month. Okay. And the final item, House Bill 5 Behavioral Health Facility Decision. And Mr. Chairman, for the sake of clarity, I am going to read a statement, and then the board can do as it sees fit. I received a call Monday from the executive that, in my opinion, necessitates a pause by the board. The executive and legislative branches currently hold differing interpretations of the board's authority under Section 17 of House Bill 5 relating to the construction of a behavioral health facility. In respect of both branches, in compliance with the act, and to avoid acting without clear direction, I recommend the board suspend any further consideration and forego further implementation of House Bill 5 until we receive written guidance specifying services to be provided at the facility, the general location desired for the facility, and confirmation that the facility is to be built as an investment security held in trust for the state. The board must avoid being placed between co-equal branches to which we owe legal and fiduciary duties. I thank local leaders of Billings and Laurel for their candid input, especially Councilman Aspenleiter and Kennedy, Billings City Administrator Chris Kukulski, Laurel City Administrator Kurt Markegard, Director Brereton and staff at the Department of Public Health and Human Services, Budget Director Osmondson and staff at the Governor's Office of Budget and Program Planning, as well as Senators Esp, Yakowicz, Lenz, Ricky, and Representatives Eckhart, Brewster, and Schomer. Their efforts reflected a shared commitment to expanding behavioral health service capacity while protecting community safety and interests. If due diligence resumes upon receipt of written guidance, no previously reviewed sites, including those on Skyway Drive, are viable, given local feedback, infrastructure costs, local zoning regulations, impacts on targeted economic development districts, and state land leasing processes. If BOI is to engage further, our future work must begin with clarity on services and siting from our partners, while still meeting our obligations to secure profits and cost savings for Montanans. That's my statement.
Thanks, Dan. Is there any additional comments?
So you're putting $26.5 million on hold.
We do not have the 26 million in it, 26.5 million. The 26.5 million is contingent upon the governor's budget director and the director of public health and human services getting a plan approved. So we don't have the cash right now. It is in the long range building program fund.
Is, okay, priority, okay, that's in part 2 of that section, okay. But then we would be waiting for the budget director to approve whatever.
We would be waiting for written guidance from the executive and legislature telling us what services do they want provided, where do they want them provided, and that it is that we're building it as an investment security.
John, go ahead.
Do you mind taking a step back and Lara, if you want to chime in? So what is the kind of, how do we get to where we're at today with you saying, like on Monday, something, giving me a little background, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I received a call from representative of the executive.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So prior to that even.
Oh,
So-
prior to-
So basically, the House Bill 5 gets through.
But yes, House Bill 5 gets through, I think it was 43-6 in the Senate, 79-16 in the House. The governor signed it on June 19th. And within the bill, there was this provision added in. Senator John Esp of Big Timber sponsored it in coordination with Senator Dennis Lenz, who had Senate Bill 912, which would have appropriated, which would have done was a separate piece of legislation to build a behavioral health facility. As part of that, we started working with the budget office and the Department of Public Health and Human Services, been meeting with them, at least the budget director, the budget office monthly, have weekly calls scheduled with the director of public health. And we've got a big project in a short timeline. How are we going to proceed? We went down and I met with the city administrator and some city council people in Billings in July, as well as a representative from the city of Laurel, invited legislators, invited city council people, basically help me understand your zoning regs, help me understand your building permit process, help me understand where your infrastructure is. Do you have any sites you think we should look at? And we gathered those, went back and basically did a big tour, and you probably saw the press on that. It was, I won't add any color. I'll save that for Representative Brewster to share.
Completely ignorant.
Yeah. So we go down and we had, I made QR codes and we created an online feedback tool. So everybody who was on the tour could scan it, give us their feedback. Is this the appropriate site? Should we look somewhere else? Do you have any other recommendations? To date, I've received 9 forms on 5 spots. I'd say there was probably 20 to 30 people there that day. So normally you'd be figuring you'd be in 100 feedback forms. We got about 9 back. So we don't have a statistically accurate sample to proceed from. But I thought it was important, as we did in Deer Lodge, to get down and meet with city council, the planning folks, the building code folks, the fire marshal folks early, so that we understand sort of the process we're getting into. It certainly was not perceived that way. I can tell you that without hesitation. So that's how we got here. The call Monday, I think, necessitates us waiting for written direct guidance. Here's what we want. And then we can take that and move forward. But
How much acreage are you looking at? Are we looking at?
so based on conversations with DPHHS, we were looking in that 10 to 15, even more, but that's sort of off the table right now because I want to see what services are going to be provided and where in the general location do you want or where generally do you want us to site this? And then we've got conflict of, okay, well, we have $26.5 million to do everything. So you've got to back infrastructure out. If we have to do land acquisition, any of the fees to design the building, all of those things have to come out of that $26.5 million. So at this point, I can give you a confident, I don't know anymore.
Thank you.
Does DPHHS have an idea of population that they're trying to size this into?
What I would say is I don't want to provide conjecture on that. I think they need to provide that to us in writing.
Right.
And they have not gotten any, I mean, that seems to be like the first thing you have to do.
Well, there have been public statements, but what I don't want to do is put the board in between legislative intent and executive interpretation.
Well,
We
right,
don't
but
win there.
that population number has not been determined by anybody yet, so.
No.
It really can't do anything. It's gotta be the first thing, seems to be, and location. Which is
I
out of
just
my
wanna make
hands.
sure I'm understanding. I'm pretty naive about this stuff. $26 million was a number put out by the legislature and signed by the governor,
Yes.
and there was no definitive plan underneath that.
The statute requires that the Department of Public Health and the BOI develop a plan to present to the budget director to then, he has to approve it before he transfers the money to us to go implement the plan. So it's sort of sitting in abeyance awaiting some sort of plan, but we are not in the mental health business or the behavioral health business, so we need to hear from them. Where is your need geographically? Where is the population to be served and what population will be served?
You've
So
only
they
got-
give us that, then we can get going.
You've only got $26 million.
26 and a half.
Regardless of what you need.
Yes.
Okay.
Larry or Dan, what is the intent of the, tell me about this facility. I mean, what is this facility to represent? What is the goal of the facility? Purpose?
That's what we're waiting to get the written guidance on.
But is your question, what is behavioral health? I mean.
Yeah,
is
are we
that-
talking I mean, like, there's a broad spectrum there. There's what used to be, say, Rivendell and Butte to Warm Springs to whatever. So it's
It was actually if it's all right, it was a comment from from the people who want this facility in the news just a day ago. And essentially, this is a facility to house the criminally insane, people who are a risk to society. So that's what this facility is for. So at least that's what they told the press. So most of my information I've gotten from the press, so and I think that is one big problem with this, is that it came over with lots of if, when, and maybes. And not enough clear explanation of what the facility was for, well, how big was it gonna be, because we're looking at developing or acquiring the land, not what's going on with that process, but it became a little confused. And I think if I can comment on what the sites that the city proposed were, there wasn't one that was really adequate. Most of them had no services nearby. the one out by Lockwood would have cost several $1 million just to get services to it. Even the one that most people favored, yeah, I mean, it's off a road that is way down below it in elevation. You know, you'd have to build some pretty interesting access to it just to make it work.
Floodplain or something?
And that was probably the best one, so.
Was it in the floodplain when you said? below?
No, you have to be really close to the river to get in the floodplain in Billings. So, it's, you know, most of these, parcels are on state land. All but what, two? One was by the sugar plant was owned by the city, but they had already committed a large portion of it for a new animal shelter. So so it was out. And one of them was way far east of Billings in a TED district. And it was 12 or 14 miles to any facilities, and that facility was undersized to serve this. So, I mean, it was a little bit of mayhem from what they proposed for us. So I agree, it probably should go back, get clear direction and not try to hurry it. People that came were under the impression that it was gonna start construction within a year or even less. And I told them I wouldn't think that. I never saw government build anything that fast. So it was a tough meeting. You know, some of the local officials were pretty adamant about not putting it in certain places, but I think there's still an opportunity to do it, but I think you'd have to go and look at what land and what area works best. And if it's not public land, then maybe you have to do some trading that would take time, or, you know, it just needs more work. And so I think if we adopted that, said you guys have to give us more detail and more information about what you want, and what things are acceptable to you. So I agree with what he's trying to do.
Do we have a motion?
We do not, but at this point, is there any other comment?
I guess my question, your trip was more information gathering.
Yeah.
Than anything. It was to find out, so you had an idea how to start planning if it moved ahead.
Right.
It wasn't to pick a side or anything, but it was more to get information what could be and the problems.
When we've done real estate, and we've done these sort of investments, we go down and we treat it like we're a private developer. We don't go in as though we're the state of Montana and we're going to come in and either use some sort of statutory framework to get around certain regulations or whatnot. So when we come in this instance, it was, hey, help me understand Billings building codes, just like we did with Deer Lodge. What's your building codes? What's your specs? Where's your infrastructure? You know, one of the things is, as Representative Brewster knows, down in Billings, there's a lot of residential areas can't get wells, and they're outside of the municipal water system. So, you know, we can't really have water trucked in for a forensic mental health facility. It just wouldn't work. So looking at that access to infrastructure is important. So yeah, we went down trying to figure it out. I think folks wanted to read more into it than was there. For what reason, I don't know, and I don't want to speculate, but you know, my job is to this board to manage these investments, which this was intended by the legislature to be treated as an investment. And until I know what our client wants, I don't know that we can deploy the capital appropriately. So that's the purpose of the statement. And what I'm asking is, let's get some clear guidance on the population to be served. Let's get some clear guidance on where the facility needs to be. And let's make sure that we're all on the same page, that this is being treated as an investment. And then I'll bring it back to all of you with, hey, here's what we got. Because as you recall, any direct real estate investments under policy have to be approved by the board. That has not been delegated to staff.
So the intent here is that it would go into the trust fund investment pool.
The intent here is that it would be part of a multi-party investment pool, whether that is in the Reese Fund or in the trust fund investment pool. In either case, it would have to be part of a multi-party investment pool.
And so we as a board would expect a return on that investment.
Correct.
And does the state understand that? Does DPH understand that we're expecting a market return?
That is something that's why I said the third part of, we need to make sure everybody understands, we do investments. You know, all of our current buildings, we measure as an investment. They're treated as a security. You know, on this building, we're making 10.2%, 9.3% at Park, 29% on 9th Avenue. So we treat these real estate assets as an investment. For those that are in the trust fund pool, about 1.25% of the entirety of the trust fund pool is the buildings. About 6% of our real estate holdings in the trust fund investment pool are these buildings. And they're currently outperforming our core real estate holdings. So they're performing very well and they're distributing income to the general fund and others. We have to operate under that cadence.
Can I pursue this, Mr. Chair? a little
Yeah,
bit?
please do.
Okay, so, section 17 of House Bill 5, is allocating $6.5 million. We are a party to that. For a law that was passed. If we don't take any action on this and say, you guys gotta figure out how this is gonna work. Are we going to be contrary to law, or what? Explain that whole thing for me.
So our core competency is real estate development in that sort of tripartite agreement. We do real estate development. We figure out how to structure it as an investment to make a profit for the state in the process. We don't determine which Montanans need which mental health services or where those Montanans are. We can't determine how to do the real estate development until we know what Montanans will be receiving services and where the people that ultimately have to sign a lease with us, the Department of Public Health and the Budget Office, the Department of Administration, want that facility to go. And they'll make that decision based on the data sets that we don't have access to, of what are admissions, who's the population, things of that nature. So we're the cart, they're the horse. And that's how I interpret it, and that's how I think it is safest for us to interpret it.
So we're basically asking that part 2 of this section. They gotta go through their process in order for us to move on.
To start with our process before we can jointly bring a proposal to the governor's budget director that then they can put through their review processes and give us either, ultimately the decision lies in the governor's office. They either approve the plan and transfer the money or they don't. But we don't have the cash in our possession right now as this investment. It's just sitting in the long range building fund, invested like all the other assets of the long range building fund.
So, the board, meeting agenda says that there's a decision here. What was the intended decision, Dan?
What's that?
It says House Bill 5 Behavioral Health Facility Decision. What was the intended decision?
If you look at the memo, the tab 2 memo,
Yeah.
it was to proceed with implementing House Bill 5, developing the plan.
Okay, now
I think we need a level of specificity as Representative Brewster has discussed. We need a greater level of specificity before we can proceed. That communications via phone are not sufficient. We need something formal to the board saying, here's the population to be served. Here's where that population needs to be served. And it needs to be served as an investment. Those are not our decisions.
Why is the board investments in this? Because this is House Bill 5, this is long range building.
Mhm.
Why was this money allocated to the board investments?
Because the sponsor of the amendment said it should be.
Okay.
I mean, it gets back to our earlier conversations on Department of Labor building. Governor's office came to us and said, hey, will you build this building? Legislature said in House Bill 819, hey, will you go build these workforce housing units? It's, if the law says thou shalt, as a subdivision of the state and a state agency and a part of the executive branch, we shall.
But if I may,
Please.
unlike the bill for the housing in Deer Lodge, that bill, as I recall, was pretty specific about what they wanted and where they wanted it. And you know, how many units, who your specific customer was.
Right,
And this does not give us a whole lot of direction.
correct.
And I think that the cart is way before the horse, number one. And number two, we are not the policymakers here with what this facility is supposed to look like. So, I mean, I don't think we want to be either. If we want to be that, then we need to get represented in front of our name or senator, or go work for the DPHHS and make those policy decisions. So, I mean, I agree with you. I'm happy to spend the money they tell us to spend, but there's a whole lot of policy that we need to have the definition on. So, and I would suggest that no motion is appropriate.
Can we do that?
Yes.
I mean, is it-
And I would agree with you.
Okay. I have my direction.
Is that a motion to table then?
No,
There's
there's
no
no
motion to
motion
table
on,
unless there's
there's
a-
no motion on the table. Yep.
So it dies for lack of motion. Nothing happens at this time until we know what they want, because I would hate to find out what could happen to this board if we proceeded doing something, anything. I mean, you know, I just don't think we want to do that until the governor and we don't have the money in the first place, but until the department can tell us what it is exactly you want us to do.
I think a fair assessment would be too much money you see being spent on property and infrastructure and not enough on building, not even know what the building's gonna be.
Well, that's the question. Tell us what populations to be served, and then we've got to work with architects and others to figure out.
But land
events should
acquisition
that
right
be,
now
and
is
The
gonna be high.
longer we're running water lines and sewer lines or purchasing private property, whatever it is, the less you have for those beds. So it's nothing new to us, but it's not our determination on what population is going to be served. That's not our lane.
Where, there's
Yeah.
nothing specific here about where.
Yep.
And if it should end up on some of that state land, well, that is the state board of lands, state land board needs to approve that before we can do anything.
So, and along that line, Dan, why were you in Billings? What made you decide to go to Billings and talk to those people?
One, I wanted to visit with the city to understand what's
Why
going on.
Billings? Why not?
Because that was if you read the press statements, and Representative Brewster, tell me if I'm wrong here. The press statements made were Billings is the right location. What I'm recommending here is statements in the press, statements over the phone are insufficient to guide our process. We need something in writing. Here's the population, here's the general location, and then we can go to work.
When you go to the governor's office and say, we're on hold until you decide, give us more detail, is this board gonna be in hot water?
Well, I'm always in hot water, so, you know,
Right.
look, the bill is clear. We have to get guidance from the executive and develop a plan with the executive before we can proceed. Hard stop. What we're asking for is formal guidance, something that tells us, here's the population we want to serve, here's where we want to serve it, and is it an investment of the state? Those are the three things we need to know before we can proceed. But the other side of that is somebody, not us, on behalf of the entirety of the executive, needs to rectify the services to be provided with the legislative intent. That's not our lane. We're part of the executive branch. So it is a tightrope. I absolutely, we are on that tightrope placed there by the amendment in House Bill 5.
Okay.
I'm just trying to keep us out of as much hot water as I can.
Well, Dan?
And I have just two quick questions. Would it be more clear if we made a specific motion to pause any further progress on HB5 until we have guidance, or is it more clear for us to do nothing? Do you think? That's the first one.
I think doing nothing and laying out the expectations of, because again, you have to approve as the board proceeding on any direct real estate investment. Me having the guidance from the board, formally or informally, to go back to the executive and say, here's the things we need. That's gonna be sufficient.
Okay. Question 2, is there a mechanism for us to be reimbursed for our cost in the development process, or is that to be had on the investment return at the end? Do we bake it into the return at the end, or does it come up front?
When the assets are under management, we allocate our costs to them. So right now we're being paid because they're part of the long range building plan program, which is part of the treasurer's cash account, which we allocate costs to. If it moves from long range building to a separate account held on behalf of the behavioral health facility, then we'd allocate our time there. So it's either way, we're being reimbursed for those costs.
I mean, it's sort of becoming one of our core competencies, but really we're here to manage investments, not develop real estate. So that's just a concern I have.
And that is, I mean, this springboards into October again. And you all set the policy about how we approach these. And let me put it this way, whether or not we're very, very good at it and return money to the general fund with it, there's no making people happy with it. Please go build this building for us. By the way, don't go build this building for us. We're in a no-win right now. And we've got to figure out a better way than where we're at right now. We've talked about last month, do we adjust the policy to say, hey, we need to have direction from the legislature, direction from the governor, and the appropriation to go forward and do something. I think in this case, asking for the specificity is appropriate, but this has become too much of a problem that I think we need to revise policy in the board to at least give the legislature some clarity, like, here's the details we need from you if you want us to do these sorts of things. And moreover, to the governor's office and to the other agencies, if you want us to build something for you as an investment, here's what we need to know about that.
Well, I think they need
To that end, I would, if this comes up in October or whenever, I would really want the understanding to be that it's like procurement, like we're gonna use state procurement on this. Does that make sense, or is that gonna be an issue?
So
John, could you repeat that?
So there's a set that the state will do for procurement. So what is is it open bidding on all the construction, open bidding on whatever, and all out in the open? And I'm not a fan, as I told Dan prior, of us being in this side of things, period. But if we are, from a protection of the board standpoint, I would prefer us, it's always attractive to have the idea we're gonna have our own separate development company and do this. But I think regardless of if that's legal or not, it creates reputational risk for the board, and just problems that I don't think we need. So if we do move forward with development, I would prefer that the state, that we use it, even though that's gonna take more time to do this, that we use the existing processes so that, in a year, no one's saying, hey, I should have, been able to bid on this, or I should have been able to do whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
And I'm sure that's not an issue, but I'm just raising it as something that I would prefer from the board standpoint to have.
So that is where your conflict with the legislature will arise. Because the legislature passed legislation that says the purchase of securities, which this would be if we're managing it, is exempt from the State Procurement Act, and they would prefer we use our regular due diligence process for managing investments. But here's the kicker. the legislature's intent was so clear that they did not provide an appropriation in House Bill 5 to build the facility except through it being an investment and a security. So that is part of what we need to remove ourselves from. We have a process on our side. There is a procurement process at the Department of Administration, Architects and Engineering. And for us to replicate a process, I mean, isn't that the same thing that everybody says about government? Let's not have two agencies doing the same thing. And from my perspective, that's part of the reason to step back. We need somebody that's not us to decide, do you want to go with the BOI model, where it is an investment and treated as a security to maximize returns and minimize costs? Or do you want to go through the Department of Administration procurement process? One is specifically exempted under the State Procurement Act. Under the law, if we didn't go that route, the project would be dead on its face because there's no appropriation to expend the funds. So that's part of why, another reason to step back. Somebody else needs to make the determination of, is it a security and exempt from the Procurement Act, or is it not? And that's a whole other bag of bees, for the lack of a better term.
I think John's, I think the point more is for the protection of the board and the decision, and potentially looking at kind of the spirit of the procurement act.
I mean, if
to-
someone sees a $26 million building being built, they're gonna wonder, where was my ability to bid on that?
Yeah, so you don't have to maybe follow or go
So
that route.
and it's clear, if there is, and I understand, Dan, that was very eloquent, like you just, and helpful from an education standpoint, the one versus the other. And maybe, and again, let's just discuss, I would just want that as a point when we do end up making a decision on this, like, it would be helpful to have legal say, here's how this works, or whatever you think is the right way to help us make an informed decision. But again, just, the way that, you're from Anaconda, you know this. I mean, the way that, the more transparency on these issues and the more open bidding on these issues, the better that's gonna be for PR for the board, whether that's desired, whether that's legally required or not. Anyway, thank you. I think that let's move to the next
The only
topic.
thing I would add is, we do go through a due diligence process to secure our contractors with these buildings. We put it out, we ran a due diligence process, we offered folks the opportunity to bid on the services to both manage our commercial property, but also be available for construction. So we didn't have to do a whole series of multi-year bids that frankly slow you down. So we have a term contract to go do this work. We charge 4%, as we discussed with the Deer Lodge project, to go do this. Others had the opportunity to put in at that time. So I guess the decision before the board is, are we going to subject ourselves to another layer of scrutiny? I don't even want to say scrutiny, because that's not the right phraseology. We have secured and contracted for construction and property management services at a low rate for a term. In 2030, when that contract's up, we will do so again, and other folks will be able to bid on that contract at that time. We have a fiduciary obligation to minimize costs and maximize returns, and in seeking out the lowest subs and all of that are expectations within that contract. So I don't want to belabor the point. I think it's more of an educational thing for the board, but my direction, as I hear it from all of you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we are on pause. We are awaiting written guidance from, telling us the population to be served, where the facility should be located, and whether or not it will be treated as an investment security of the state. Okay, that's how we
One other
proceed.
question or comment, the Billings thing for Mr. Barrett, wasn't that at the direction of Senator Esp and Representative Lentz, is that his name? I mean, Billings came in because of the sponsors of the bill and the DPH.
The original House Senate Bill 912 said east of Big Timber. was the location, and that was picked up and added into the amendment.
I think DPS would like it to be in buildings because then you alleviate a little bit of the problems of having too small of a population and no housing
Yeah.
for employees and those kind of things. The larger city, at least in my conversations, that's sort of the rationale I've heard.
I mean, how many people did they anticipate working at the facility?
That's a good question.
I never had any information.
I don't think we know how big the facility is yet.
Even type of employees to determine where you should be.
Okay.
All right, I think we've had our discussion on the topic. At this point, I'd like to invite any public comment.
Just raise your hand on the Zoom and we will ask 3 times.
Do we have any public comment? So again, is there any public comment?
They may, Dan, just as a point of information, you might want to just say, hey, listen, to raise your hand, you go to the click on, I mean, a lot of people might not know how to use Zoom effectively, like, cause right now they're muted. And
Right.
so, it might be helpful to educate them that if they do have a question, to put it in chat, which is right there, they can click in chat and say, I request comment, or to,
So
under
we
the
have,
heart, that's where you would raise your hand.
so the heart is reactions.
Yes.
So that yeah, you can raise your hand, but,
Or give a thumbs up?
or a thumbs up, or a smiley face. Yeah, Court did it and then he took it down.
It's just demonstrating.
Yeah.
It looks like someone's in chat.
Very enlightening. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. All right. Hearing no motion, we will move forward.
Mr. Chairman, have we earned a little break here?
I think we've earned a break. So.
Now we're live.
All right, back to business here. Looks like we're on tab 3, Montana Loan Program. Doug, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. So I'll do a review of the commercial and residential loan portfolios. The participation loan program had an outstanding balance as of June 30th of roughly $100 million. There was 47 loans and the yield was 2.98. There's one reservation for $1,920,000. And then there's one committed loan for 7.9 million. There's no past due loans in any of the programs. The infrastructure loan program balance, a little over 8.4 million, represents 8 loans. The yield is 3.85. We've got one committed loan for almost 3.7 million. There's no past due loans. The intermediary relending program, or IRP program for short, has a balance of a little over 5.4 million. There's 48 loans. The yield is 2%. We have one committed loan for 250,000. The science and tech portfolio has a balance of a little over 272,000. That's just one loan. The yield is 7.5%. Montana Facility Finance Authority's balance is a little over 11.5 million. That's 16 loans and the return is 3.54%. They do have 2 loan reservations that total a little over 2.1 million. And there's no past due loans. And then in our residential loan portfolio, the balance is a little over 927,000. That's 30 loans. The yield is 6.2. There's one loan over 90 days past due. It's got an FHA guarantee on it, so no risk there. And then the Montana Down Payment Assistance Program had a balance of total 81 million. There's 137 loans. As you may recall, the repayment on these loans started in January of 2027, so nothing's going to be past due, hopefully. For a while. And then the Veterans Home Loan Mortgage Program and the Multi-Coal Trust Home Program, you may recall, I've reported those before. Those were all transferred to the Board of Housing on June 26th. And then the proceeds of that were reinvested. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
I, Mr.
Go ahead, Mark.
On the down payment assistance loan program, 81 million is out. Is there any capacity left in that program? Is there any money left?
Well, as we get money back in,
But it's fully allocated.
it's fully allocated. But we've got some payoffs in, so I believe there's some money down payment assistance program.
Yes.
There's some money in the account, but I don't know how much it is.
Couple $100,000.
John?
What was the science tech portfolio? I mean, tell me a little bit about that, and then.
So that portfolio was acquired before me from the Department of Commerce. And it was
In 1989, when we were 6, there was an economic development initiative passed by the legislature that issued bonds for science and technology startups in the state. It did not go as well as they would have hoped. So the remaining bonds were transferred to the Board of Investments in subsequent years, and we've been treating them as receivables of the, I believe, Coal Trust.
Yeah.
So the proceeds of that are being paid to the Coal Trust, based on actions of 1989, and I want to say 94 or 97 legislature.
So what is the 272? Who's that represent?
It's just the final loan that's left out of that portfolio.
There were 4 loans prior to I can't remember the bill number, but debt-free in 23 that passed in the 23 legislative session. And the University of Montana, Montana State, and Montana Tech had outstanding debts, and the governor's office paid those off. So we're down from, I think it was a $7 million portfolio to a $270,000 portfolio. That wasn't state debt, that's a private company. So they couldn't pay it off, and it's yielding pretty good. So it's like, just keep paying.
Yeah, no, who is that? That's what I was curious about.
I'll have to get that for you, John.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Thanks, Doug.
All right.
Next item, tab 4, municipal bond program. Thanks, Louise.
Chairman, members of the board. For those of us joining us on Zoom, I'm Louise Welsh with the director, or I am the director of municipal loans. And it shows on the agenda there that it's tab 4 bond program. It is the municipal loan program now. And throughout my history here, I have a good reputation of being able to trim the fat. So you folks need to catch up on your agenda, so I will do just that. We have 2 programs under this, is the NCAP loan program and also the new one with the Montana Housing Infrastructure Loan, the bond program piece of it. And so they're starting out with InterCap. There's the activity summary. Does anyone have any questions on the activities? Okay, we'll go on to the staff approved loans. Does anyone have any questions on the staff approved loans?
So these are all approved because it's under, what is the threshold for us? I forgot.
Staff can do up to $1 million.
And how many were rejected? I mean, do we just approve all? Is it just kind of as they apply, pretty much approved, or is there, what's the process there?
We do a credit analysis on every one of our loans. There are some that do not make it. And at that point, if they do not make muster, they do not come to the board. and they won't even come to staff group if they do. And it's very far and few in between, but they do happen. Okay, no more questions on that. We also provide an annual detail report. There is a correction on that loan concentration memo on the very bottom. There is the Department of Transportation. It's on that little table under there about those that have 5% of the loan balance or over that. Department of Transportation, they're actually 10.21%.
So the percent of total.
And right below that is 6.34, and I think that was MSU.
So are you talking is the year 25?
That's 25.
And the principal outstanding.
Yep.
Was it, so about 10.2?
10.21%.
Yeah.
So the outstanding numbers, the amount is correct, it's the percentage.
So what's the MSU one then?
MSU is 6.34.
Wait, I'm sorry. So Department of Transportation is 6.98 million and it's a 10%, right?
Yep.
And then Montana State is 4.33 and it's a 6 point what?
6.34.
Thank you.
I'll have that wrapped up in a copy paste. Okay, so are there any questions on the annual detail? There's a nice worksheet in there. We provided a map of the counties, and it's all sorted by county. These are active loans, so if you have commitments out there that you haven't tapped into yet, or if they also have an outstanding loan. So these are active loans as of a snapshot, as of the end of fiscal year.
So Silver Bowl County doesn't have anything?
Not right now.
Well.
They don't do loans. They only do grants or other things that don't require payback.
They did pay off the loan they had quite a while ago, and that was the ladder truck. That was a ladder truck, and it was a GO bond. They asked them to put one of those nice 40s girls on it and Louise, but they wouldn't do it. You know, when things are serious, Louise is coming out. And they didn't do it, so I was a little disappointed. Anyway, so no, Silverwood does not have any.
So so on the last one, I remember I put a question mark on this when I went through it. The MSU, I mean, I'm all for the cats, so, but looks like we loaned them 3.6 for their facility for the football.
Yes.
And then I guess we must have approved the field improvements, because that's 2.5, so that came before the board. When was that?
Oh, I would have to look on the,
2019,
that was a while ago.
it looks like, is the
Yeah,
commitment date,
exactly.
okay.
Not the date.
We got commitments.
So it's pretty broad kind of what it can be used for, which is interesting.
Yes, very broad. If it is something that they can borrow for within their legislative borrowing authority, then they're able to finance it through us.
Having been through the process with Louise when I worked at Montana Tech, I know it's very, very difficult task to get through, but she's good at helping you through it, so.
It's great.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, any more questions on the detail? All right, well, let's look at that very quickly. The bond program, so that is one of 5 programs that can loan out of that state special revenue account that the legislature so named the Montana Housing Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund account. Yes, that's a mouthful. Now, part of it, I have one of those. In the bond program, we have one loan. And that loan is a little over 2 million is the outstanding. The yield is 1.71. I did have some pictures for you for an update, but you know what? I don't need to share those because I think we need to catch up on our time. So how about if there's any questions that you have, happy to answer those.
If you want to see the pictures on your way to get lunch, stop by Louise's office and she'll show you.
Flipping through the slides.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Louise.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to tab 5, trust funds investment review.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we understand that this presentation is the only thing between you and lunch, so we'll be courteous to your time. The fixed income team's here today to present a deep dive on the trust fund investment pool. Joining me will be Kirsten Haswell. Kirsten is an investment officer with the board. She's been with us for a little over 9 years. Sam Holman is a fixed income investment analyst, and she's been with the board about 5 years, but about 2.5 with the fixed income team after a stint as a paid intern, and she was on the accounting team for a little while. And also then Ethan Kittle is a fixed income analyst. He's been with us 6 months, a little over 6 months, after a stint with the board's consultant, RBK. So thank you, Becky, and apologies for that. So all the members will do part of the presentation, and that's because all the members actively manage the trust fund investment pool. Additionally, we use a team approach. That approach allows for efficiency. For example, we automated some of our relative value generations ideas. We've started scratching the surface as to what AI might do for credit research. And so want all the members to be involved. And with that, I will turn it over to the rest of the team. Please feel free to ask questions at any point. I will turn it over to Ethan Kittle to talk about some fixed income basics.
Thank you, John. And good morning, members of the board. So starting off on slide 4, what is fixed income? So to help establish a clear definition of fixed income, I think it's helpful to contrast it with an asset class more of you are familiar with, equities. At its core, equities represent ownership in a business. Your investment is a claim on a company's future profits, which is inherently full of a lot of uncertainty. With fixed income, on the other hand, you're a lender. You receive a binding contractual promise to be repaid your principal, your initial investment, and interest at specified dates in the future. This carries a lot more certainty. The other unique feature about fixed income is that there's a built-in safety net, this thing called seniority. And what this means is that in the event of a crisis, if a company goes bankrupt, you, the lender, must be paid back before stockholders. This provides a structural layer of protection for your investments that stockholders simply do not have. These features ultimately make fixed income a much more structurally defensive asset class. With that, I'll pause for any questions on slide 4. Hearing none, we can move on to slide 5, the objectives of fixed income. So, building on this unique and frankly cool asset class that is fixed income, let's dive into 3 primary functions or objectives of fixed income. First is to generate total return. And this comes from 2 distinct sources. First is from income. These are those steady, predictable cash fixed coupon payments. And next is from capital appreciation. And this is the potential to sell the bond in the future for a profit if its market price increases. And this is typically happens when market interest rates fall. And we'll get into this more in the coming slides. Next is to provide diversification. And this is generally provided by those higher quality bonds. Think US government bonds or investment grade corporate bonds. And during market panics, these assets tend to hold their value or even increase as investors seek safer asset classes. And this provides critical stability to the portfolio when other higher risk assets are falling. And finally, to offer liquidity, and fixed income creates access to cash in 2 primary ways. First, from maturing bonds and those incoming coupon payments that provide regular, predictable sources of liquidity for various needs. Think distributions to participants. And second is from the US Treasury market, as it is one of the world's most liquid markets, allowing investors to easily sell their bonds for cash. With that, I will pause for any questions on slide 5. None. We'll move on to slide 6, fixed income risk factors. So I think these risk factors can be grouped into 2 broad buckets. First, risk tied to market interest rates, and second, risk tied to specific issuer and market structure. First, we'll look at interest rate risks, starting off with the real risk-free rate. And this is the theoretical required return for an investment with 0 risk. It represents pure compensation for an investor delaying their spending. And it changes based on fundamental supply demand dynamics for capital in an economy. Next, we have inflation risk. And this is the risk the rising inflation will erode the purchasing power of your fixed coupon payments. A simple example here, say you have a 5% coupon bond. That coupon payment is much less valuable when inflation is running at 4% compared to when it is running at 1%. Preserves more of your purchasing power. Next, we have maturity risk, and this is the risk tied to the length of your lending agreement. The longer your lending agreement, the more the bond price will fluctuate, or the more bond price will fluctuate with interest rates. And this is because cash flows are locked in for longer periods of time, making them more sensitive to rate changes. Now we'll move on to that second group, issuer and market structure risk, starting off with default risk or credit risk, as it's otherwise known as. This is the risk that an issuer will fail to make those promised interest payments or repay principal. And this risk is directly tied to the financial health and creditworthiness of the entity you lent money to. And finally, we have liquidity risk. Put simply, it's the risk that you won't be able to sell your bond quickly or at a fair market price. And this risk can become much more meaningful during periods of market stress when buyers can become scarce. And this risk is further exacerbated by the fact that most bonds trade over the counter, not on centralized exchanges like equities, which can make finding a counterparty even harder. With that, I'll pause for any questions on slide 6. Hearing none, we can move on to slide 7, interest rate sensitivity. And the key fundamental principle here is that there is an inverse relationship between a bond's price and interest rates. When a market interest rates go up, the value of your existing bond goes down. And the reverse is also true. So you may be asking yourself why. Why is this the case? Well, your bond pays a fixed coupon that never changes. However, the rates on newly issued bonds are constantly changing with the market environment. The price of your existing bond must adjust to remain competitive with the newly issued bonds. To drive this point home, I want to dive into 2 scenarios. Scenario 1, market interest rates rise. You hold a 3% coupon bond, but newly issued equivalent bonds are being issued at 4%. The effect here, your 3% bond is now less attractive. No one would pay full price for this bond. The result, the market price of your bond must decrease to make its overall yield competitive with that of the newly issued 4% bond. The key takeaway here, rising rates leads to falling prices for existing bonds. Scenario 2, this is the scenario we as fixed income investors like more. Market interest rates fall. You hold that same 3% coupon bond, but newly issued bonds are being issued at 2%. Your bond with its higher fixed payment is now highly desirable. Result, increased demand drives the price of your bond upward until the bond's overall yield is competitive with that of the newly issued 2% bond. Key takeaway here, falling rates leads to rising prices for existing bonds. With that, I will pause for any questions on slide 7 or any of the slides I covered.
My favorite one, favorite picture.
With that, hearing none, I will pass it to Kirsten to touch on the trust fund investment pool. Thank you all.
Thanks, Ethan.
Right, we are now on slide 8 and going to get into some of the overview slides for the trust fund investment pool. This first slide here is really just to show the significant growth we've seen in the pool over the last couple of years, over $1 billion in the last 5 years in terms of the book value. While we're expanding that, the distributions have also gone up over $60 million per year to the participants. So a good place to be. It's really exciting to see the pool growing so much. We expect that trend to continue with the Go Trust investment into the trust fund investment pool. I would think we'd be at $4 billion by the end of the fiscal year that we're in right now. So very cool stuff. With that, we'll move to slide 9. This is kind of a busy slide here, but this is kind of to show you, where does the money come from? What does it support? Here's a list of all of our separately managed accounts that can invest in the trust fund. These assets here are not all trust fund dollars. It's, STIP, trust fund, sometimes separate securities. And I will point out that Montana State Fund is listed here because they are a separate account. They do not invest in trust fund. They have their own internally managed portfolio of fixed income. So we'll get into some details on a couple of these, just as I said, to show you kind of where does money come from, where does it go. These funds can be permanent in nature, such as the Coal Severance Tax Fund. That was established by the state constitution. It requires at least 50% of the coal severance tax dollars to be deposited in trust, and that principle should not be touched unless the legislature can get 3/4 votes in both houses. And then the coal severance is then split into, a number of sub-accounts by the legislature. School Facilities Fund is one, supporting school facilities, as the name suggests, or the Big Sky Economic Fund that supports good paying jobs in Montana. Another one of our permanent funds, the Noxious Weed Management Trust. These funds were legislatively mandated to fight harmful plants across the state. Considering Montana categorizes 98% of the land as rangeland, pastureland, cropland, forest, or wildlands. This is an extremely important fund for the state. These dollars they earn in interest go for management of the weeds as well as education for the management of weeds. So kind of an interesting thing here. When we go over to the expendable funds, most of these funds tend to be cleanup or environmentally based funds. Expendable meaning we expect them to be spent down to zero at some point, usually in the nearest future. I'll point out the Upper Clark Fork River Basin Restoration Funds. This was a legal settlement between the United States government, the state of Montana, and ARCO to provide funding for the cleanup and restoration on and around the Clark Fork River Basin and its tributaries.
Would those funds have been used to take out Bonner Dam and reclaim that area?
Yes.
Just one more question.
Those-
She's probably been told.
Just to clarify, that was done by EPA money,
Yes.
that
Oh.
particular.
There was
action.
nothing out of this to do that particular project? It's all EPA?
Yeah, not for the cleanup and taking out the dam, but to remediate and to replace the economic value.
Oh,
So like the soil contamination part of that.
just one more question.
Sure.
Going back to permit, I'm sure it's been said, who was Harold Ham?
He was
Who's
a
Gilbert Grape.
donor, he's a big oil guy that was playing out east during the Bakken boom.
Oh.
And he made a donation while he was active in the state.
And is that got a specific purpose, specific use?
Yes, that is, goes to,
That's the Historical Society. I have no idea what it's.
no, it's
Nope.
one of the universities.
Helena College.
Oh, okay.
And it's for, I believe if I recall, because I used to cover this one, it's aircraft mechanics type stuff. It's a scholarship fund. It's not, I think it's not very big. It was like
Never had it done.
or something.
I want to know what the older Montanans Trust Fund is. Being one of those older Montanans.
Yeah, so that's for programs to support older Montanans. They don't spend any money usually, so.
Oh, so we could apply.
That program was initially funded with a $10 million allocation by the legislature. The subsequent legislature pulled 9 million of that back, and so.
Yeah.
It's a little.
Which the budget director at the time had nothing to do with.
So can we find out more about that now?
I'm happy to ask them if they're ever going to build a good program for you guys.
I do have a real question though.
Yeah.
The Upper Clark Fork River Basin, there's two funds. Are they for different purposes?
Yes.
So the,
Yeah.
One's a reserve and one's restoration.
I can't remember exactly.
reserve, so when they did the allocations post Silver Bow Creek, they were reserves, the remnants from Silver Bow Creek flowed into the Upper Clark Fork River Basin as part of the consent decree. So there's the reserve bucket and the actual remediation bucket, both are under DEQ and the Natural Resource Damage Program to coordinate the remedy. If they tap all of the resources in the main fund, then they can spill over into the reserve.
Thank you.
Great, we'll move on to insurance funds. One of the biggest other than state fund, the state employee group benefits. This is healthcare benefits divisions fund. They are legislatively mandated to provide state employees with adequate group health and related benefits in an effective and cost efficient way. And then you'll see the operating funds here. In general, these are university operating accounts. Of course, we do not manage their endowments, so these are operating funds. As you can see with this large list of trust fund participants, we are supporting a number of state agencies and projects for the state. We'll skip slide 10 since I kind of already talked about that. And then we can go on to 11. The strategic objective of the trust fund investment pool, we're trying to support the trust fund clients that we just talked about in reaching their goals, which are many and varied. The investment objectives, we want to provide income for these operations and projects while maintaining principal for future cash flows so that they can continue. And then I'll back up for a second to talk about the pool objectives, kind of look at the big picture. You know, why do we do a pool for our separately managed accounts? You can imagine if every single one of our separately managed accounts, call it about 60 of them, had $1 million to invest long-term. They could each buy one $1 million bond, be open to all the risks that Ethan talked about, you know, with maturity, if it's corporate credit risk, and only the one, or in this case, pool them together so that they can share in the risk. This also leads to that steady stream of income that we were talking about because it's a pooled approach. And overall, it can lead to enhanced return for our participants.
So when you're allocating earnings, do you do some kind of a weighting then based on?
Yes, yeah.
Order changes?
And that is, accounting does all the work for us, but yes, it's, there's a monthly distribution and it is split between all the participants pro rata.
Each participant has shares of the pool and the distribution is based on the number of shares. Monthly.
Right, and that
But the
shares
shares
can go up and down.
Shares are pro-rata, right?
Shares are priced at $1.
No. For trust fund.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
The
but,
value of the share can fluctuate, but the
Yes.
distribution per share
Yes.
is the same,
Basically a mutual fund.
much like a mutual fund.
Great question. All right, now we'll get into a little bit of the details. At the end of the fiscal year, as I have already shown you, the trust fund investment pool is about $3.5 billion. In the right-hand side here, you can see our diverse asset allocation. The largest portion of this is the core fixed income. That is what is internally managed by our fixed income team here. This is all investment grade fixed income, and that's what helps create those stable cash flows for all of our participants. And I am going to hand it off to Sam to kind of walk through these details and expand on this asset allocation.
Kristen. And good morning. As Kristen mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit more about our asset allocation in trust fund. Trust fund now represents a much more diversified portfolio than it has in previous years. Our investment staff spends a lot of time contemplating our asset allocation to determine the best mix for our participants. While a heavy portion of trust fund is in core fixed income, which you can see on the bottom of the slide, over the last several years, we have intentionally shifted to a more diversified portfolio. The biggest changes here were the addition of real assets and private credit, and most notably a significant increase to our allowable investment in real estate. In the charts below, you can see that these changes have reshaped the portfolio from 90% core allocation to now 70% with more asset classes as well. The purpose for this is, one, it enhances yield opportunities for participants, and two, it moderates the pool's exposure to market risks. Going forward, we expect this diversification to drive an increase in participant distributions. Any questions? Moving on to the next slide, slide 14. You may notice that when we talk about trust fund, we discuss distributions a lot. And a big reason for this is distributions is money going into our participants' hands that they can use for their operations and their budgets and whatnot. And therefore it's monitored pretty closely, and we do our best to maximize those. Looking at the chart here on the bottom, you can see the historical distributable yield, which is in the darker blue line. And then the lighter blue-green line is the Bloomberg Ag yield to worst. Up until a couple of years ago, the yield had been pressured downward, and this had been the trend for nearly 30 years. However, starting in 2020 and 2021, we started to see yields begin to increase. This is a result of lower yielding bonds maturing and being replaced with higher yielding bonds, given the current rate environment. And then coupled with the shift in the portfolio's makeup to more diversification, we see that increase in yields. There's also less volatility in our line compared to the ag, which is those things I just discussed. Given today's rate environment, we do anticipate yields to continue increasing moderately as older bonds mature and are replaced by newer bonds. Questions?
One question, do you require the participants that, when they want money out, to give you like a 30-day advance notice and stuff because of the type of instruments you're in then?
Yeah, so we do buys and sells into trust fund on a monthly basis. So prior to like the last week of the month, we typically know if they have the cash needs and whatnot.
Yeah, it's not immediate that they get.
No, yeah.
It could be as immediate as the day before the last day of the month, so the second to last day of the month, they give us notice.
Okay.
I'll hand it back to John.
Thanks, Sam. Quick conclusion. We spent a lot of time talking about return here, but I would note I'd never had a trust fund investment pool participant initiate a conversation about total return. They care much, much more about their current income and their projection of future income, particularly.
Imagine that.
Yeah, so particularly around the budget cycle is when we get questions for participants. So our goal is to provide participants with a strong, stable yield distribution. And to achieve that goal, we're continuously adjusting the asset allocations, and we work extensively in our team, but broader with the rest of the asset class teams. So you see the large allocation to real estate. So we're working with the real estate, real assets team. We work with the public markets team through the allocation to Core Plus outside managers. And most recently, we're working with the private markets team for the newer private credit. So robust discussions with all the teams, and it does take the team to put it all together. So TFIP, it offers a challenging, diverse, rewarding asset management opportunity. I'd like to thank the board for giving us the chance to do what I think is the funnest job in the state of Montana. happy to take additional questions. So how that goes, most important, hardest, funnest.
Say most important one.
Artist.
Hardest, funnest.
Hey, question for you, regarding the non-core fixed, is that, I think we're gonna be talking about that, John, later for the, emerging market and high yield?
Yes.
And emerging market fits into non-core?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, sorry, Jeff. I'm sorry, Mark.
I have a question on the chart that we get every month. We got a column here that's PFIP holdings, but we also have this other holdings column here. What's in the other holdings, especially?
So occasionally we'll have separate securities. And usually that's gonna be a treasury with a maturity to match an expected significant distribution. And we won't see, you don't see, do you see Go Trust on there?
Yeah, it's on here.
And so those do hold a significant amount of treasuries that we bought as the money came in to hedge inflation rates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, looks like we caught back up, so.
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman, we do have Senator Morajo, who has joined us from the hospital in San Francisco, where his son Sky was born yesterday. So I sent him our congratulations, and that's all he gets, because I don't know what hospital he's in Sacramento and San Francisco, so we can't send him an actual gift.
Congratulations.
Hey, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
There we go. Over. Ready for break? Would we just do an hour?
I think that sounds good.
Okay.